And you'll find out why. I really think this is such a chapter, and I didn't want to I really debated about blowing through it last week, and then I was like, no, I just can't do that. So just as a super quick recap, we talked about the women who accompanied Jesus, and of course you have women from all different kinds of backgrounds. These are the Galilean women. You have prominent women. You have Mary Magdalene, who had the 7 demons taken out of her. She was healed of demonology. This is a very predominant theme that you find throughout the Gospel of Luke. So Luke highlights often the demons. Luke highlights the Gentiles, that Jesus preached and ministered to the Gentiles. He highlights women and just generally the outcasts. And, of course, people living in poverty. And he highlights the role of the Holy Spirit more than any other gospel writer. So be aware of those themes throughout Luke, and you'll see these things definitely not just come to the surface, but they're very prominent. We talked about the parable of the sower. You remember the great crowd came, and they gathered around him, and he talked about the sower where the seed falls on different types of soil. And it was only his disciples who came back to him and said, tell us what this parable means. And so we kind of showed how Luke shows a distinction between people who are seeking and searching and other people who are just gathering around Jesus because they want the healing. They want the, I guess handouts might be a little bit unfair maybe, but it's what they wanted. Jesus points that out pretty often, that the people only followed him because they wanted to see signs. In fact, he condemns them. It's the woe to you passages. You guys want all these signs, but I'm right here. All you have to do is open your eyes, and I'm right here. But yet you demand these signs. You want all the healings, and you want all these things, and then you deny them anyway. So he kind of separates those groups of people. We talked about a lamp under a jar. And I think we ended with Jesus' mothers and brothers. So the calming of the storm, we might have gotten into this a little bit, but I want to highlight this a little bit more. So this story is told differently in the different Gospels, and each Gospel writer has their own purpose for why they tell the story in the way that they tell it. So it all depends. And I'll pick on Terry today. If Terry and I both experience the same event, and it's a life-changing event, we're both, when we retell that story, it's going to be told very differently, right? Based on our life experiences, based on the purpose for telling that story. Maybe Terry was, he was full of faith, and he kind of saw the outcome playing out as it was happening, and so he's telling the story through that lens, where I might have had severe doubt, and in the end came to faith through that event. And so I tell it from a very different perspective. In fact, John, how does he begin his gospel? I write these things so that you believe. That's the whole purpose of John's gospel. And so everything is tied into steering people towards believing that Jesus is the Son of God. So Luke has a different purpose in the way that he writes, but this story is told in the other Gospels, and this is, Mark tells this story and gives a lot more detail about the crowds pressing in on Jesus, and they were exhausted. They had no leisure even to eat. Jesus says, well, let's go to the other side of the Sea of Galilee. Let's get some rest. And so they do that, and as soon as they get there, there's this crowd of thousands of people, and they're all hungry, and Jesus begins preaching. He preaches till the sun goes down. And then he tells the disciples, hey, why don't you guys go get some food for them? And they're like, basically, what are you, insane? And then Jesus, of course, does the miraculous, what's it called? The expansion of the food, hands out food to everybody, and then they take up the leftovers. Jesus puts his disciples on the boat to go back to the west side of the lake, over towards Capernaum, and his disciples are exhausted. And Jesus is up on the mountain, he's praying, And in the night, they face the storm, and they're rowing at, it's like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning is what the scriptures record. And so Jesus is walking on the water, and I think it's Mark's gospel who says he intended, I don't remember if it's Matthew or Mark, but he intended to pass them by. That's this story. So listen how Luke records this story. A lot of those details are absent from it, but he writes it this way. One day he got into the boat with his disciples and said to them, "Let us go across to the other side of the lake." So they set out, and as they sailed, he fell asleep. And a windstorm came down on the lake, and they were filling with water and were in danger. And they went and woke him, saying, "Master, Master, we're perishing." And he awoke and rebuked the wind and the raging waves, and they ceased, and there was a calm. He said to them, "Where is your faith?" And they were afraid, and they marveled, saying to one another, "Who then is this, that he commands even the waves and the water, and they obey him?" Then they sailed to the country of the Gerasenes. So again, this is a very different story. And sometimes it's hard to distinguish the stories too, because here Jesus is in the boat. The other one, Jesus is he's on the shore. He's not in the boat. And you have multiple stories of the seas being calmed. And so the point of this story, according to Luke, is that Jesus, like Jacob said, I really like that. The hired hand isn't hired unless he's not afraid of the storm. Don't fear the storm. Jesus didn't fear the storm. He was able to sleep. He was sleeping peacefully, and it was no problem for him because he had faith. Here's the fascinating story, and this is where I want to spend a good bit of our time today. Then they sailed to the country of the Gerasenes, which is opposite Galilee. When Jesus had stepped out on land, there met him a man from the city who had demons. For a long time he had worn no clothes, and he had not lived in a house but among the tombs. When he saw Jesus, he cried out and fell down before him and said with a loud voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, do not torment me." For he had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man. I'm going to pause here for a second. First of all, which side of the sea, see how well you know your geography, which side of the Sea of Galilee is the Gerasenes? You guys were on the lake, so. Jacob, he was standing on the bow doing the scene from Titanic. It's on the east side. So the west side is Capernaum. It's the Galilean side of the Sea of the sea. On the east side is the Decapolis. So Deca, 10, polis in Greek is city. So it's literally the region of the 10 cities. So this is where the Gerasenes is. You're in Gentile territory now. So they're going across, and I want you to picture this whole scene. They're going across opposite Galilee. So they're on the Gentile side. They're on the east side of the Sea of Galilee. When Jesus stepped out on land, there met him from the city. There met him a man from the city who had demons. So Jesus was immediately met by this man. So you have a couple components. One is you have the demonology factor. You have the Gentile factor, right? Luke highlights the Gentiles. Jesus is intentionally traveling into Gentile territory. We often think of Jesus' ministry as he ministered to the Jews and then kind of the Gentiles. It's not really the case. I mean, he ministered very much to the Gentiles, very often. So another thing is, I want us to understand the landscape about this. This is actually a picture of the Gerasenes. And so keep in mind, this demon-possessed man was in the tombs. The tombs, you can't really see them. I think that's one right there. The tombs are kind of built into the side of this mountain here. So where are the cities typically? Well, you can see in this picture, your cities are going to be down low, and on the opposite side of that mountain. See up top, there's not really anything. It's hard to see, but there's like maybe a house there. That's it. Why do you think there's nothing up top there? Yeah. Where's your access to clean drinking water? You're not really going to have good drinking water. You're not going to drill a well down, 30 feet, dig a well by hand and hit water up here. It's just not, you're not going to have good water. So you build the cities where you have access to water. You have, definitely for all the fishermen, you want to be located by the water and not have to travel that monstrosity every day. What else do you see up top here? What are these on the flat part up here? What do you see? What are those? In front of the trees. All this right here. Nice and flat, green. They're pastures. You have your pasture land where the flocks are. It's where all your flocks. So remember, what happens in this story? We all know the end of it, right? What happens in the story? The demons go where? Yeah, and the pigs. Where are the pigs at? They fall off into the Sea of Galilee. Now I want you to imagine this for a second, because where's your populated area? Down here. Where are your tombs? Up here. The man is in the tombs. Where are the pigs? Up here. Who has a front row seat to everything that's going on all the time? All these people, right? All these people are witnessing everything. So when this guy is up in the tombs, and he's very noisy. We're going to learn in a little bit. He's very noisy. He's very strong. He's very naked. Don't blush, Jared. This is an adult Bible class. The guy's naked, running through the city, and then going back up where? To the tombs. Well, the question is, why didn't they restrain him? They couldn't. They tried. They put him in chains and shackles. And before people, which I know we wouldn't do this, but unbelievers will say things like, well, that's not humanly possible. Like you can't shackle somebody and they break the chains. You want to bet? You ever see extreme human strength? What are some examples? Give some examples of extreme human strength. Yeah, picking up a car. DP flexing back there. Yeah, what happens? What happens when people pick up cars? It happens all the time. You got like the 125-pound woman who flips a car, literally by herself can flip a car over. How does that happen? So, yeah, adrenaline, right? Pure adrenaline. Adrenaline gives superhuman strength. There are examples of, of course, bodybuilders, and they're built a little bit differently. They train for it, but they can do superhuman things. They can lift thousands of pounds. I've seen videos where guys are shackled in chains, and they can snap the chains. It's very physically possible. So there's a lot going on here. Also, what's going to happen when this guy is up in these tombs? What does this mountain produce? His voice is coming out this way. It's projecting out towards the sea. Yeah, this is a backdrop. We live in the mountains. What does it produce? It naturally produces what? Starts with an A. Amphitheater. Yeah, it's an amphitheater. It's a natural acoustic amplifier that when Jesus preached, imagine him preaching there on the side. His voice is going to ricochet off of that immediate backdrop. It's going to go back out over the water. It's going to be very loud. And so every noise that man makes in those tombs is going to be amplified and magnified by a lot. All right? So I want you to picture this scene, and now we're going to go back to the text. I'm going to read this again, and then we're just going to keep going to the end of the text. When they sailed to the country of the Gerasenes, which is opposite Galilee, there, when Jesus had stepped out on land, there met him a man from the city who had demons. For a long time he had worn no clothes, and he had not lived in a house, but among the tombs. When he saw Jesus, he cried out and fell down before him and said what? With a loud voice. I promise you, everybody in probably a couple mile radius is going to hear this kind of commotion. He said with a loud voice, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God?" What do you find interesting about that? He knows exactly who Jesus is. Right? It reminds me of James. Even the demons believe and they shudder. Jesus' own brother said the demons shudder. Where do you think James figured that out? James was here. Even the demons believe and they shudder. When they see Jesus, they shudder. They know who he is, they shudder. "I beg you, do not torment me." For he had commanded the unclean spirit to come out of the man. For many a time it had seized him. He was kept under guard and bound with chains and shackles, but he would break the bonds and be driven by the demon into the desert. Where's the desert in that picture? He'd go up here, go out into the desert area. So it didn't matter if you were in the city or if you were out in the country, you were not exempt from this man finding you. Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Legion," for many demons had entered him. Legion is it's somebody who was over 6,000 troops. It was like a troop of 6,000. So a legion is about 6,000. So there are literally thousands of demons inside of this man. And they begged him not to command them to depart into the abyss. What does this mean? Do we find any evidence of this anywhere in the scriptures? It's kind of a rhetorical question. The answer is yes. I can think of a couple examples. I can think of Revelation chapter 9. Brent did a whole thing on Revelation before. In Revelation 9, let's see. Revelation 9, the fifth angel blew his trumpet, and I saw a star fallen from heaven to earth, and he was given the key to the shaft of the bottomless pit, this abyss. He opened the shaft of the bottomless pit, and from the shaft rose smoke like the smoke of a great furnace, and the sun and the air were darkened with the smoke from the shaft. Then from the smoke came locusts on earth, and they were given power like the power of the scorpions of the earth. They were told not to harm the grass of the earth, or any green plant or any tree, but only those people who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. They were allowed to torment them for 5 months, but not to kill them, and their torment was like the torment of a scorpion when it stings someone. I think John's describing demons here. This is the great abyss. The abyss was opened up. The demons were allowed to go out, and they were allowed to torment people. Now, listen to this description. Verse 6, "And in those days, people will seek death and will not find it. They will long to die, but death will flee from them." They're begging to die. Do you ever see anybody who was so tormented, so tortured, that they begged to die? They said, all I want to do is, I want this pain to stop. Yeah. Probably all of us have. And so that's what the torture's like. So the demons are like, don't send us to the abyss. Another place is 2 Peter chapter 2. Peter's pretty descriptive about this. I'm only going to read one verse here. Verse 4, 2 Peter 2:4, for if God did not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell and committed them to chains of gloomy darkness to be kept until the judgment. If he did not spare the ancient world, but preserved Noah, a herald of righteousness, on and on and on. So he has the power to subdue these demons and to hold them there until when? Until judgment day. They're ultimately going to be judged, but they're begging him, please don't send us to the abyss and don't hold us there. And it's basically delaying the inevitable.
Yeah, it's interesting. So they prefer to be here
Yeah.
than there.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's interesting is what it said about, for he had been commanding the unclean spirit to come out of the man.
Sorry, Danny. I forgot about. Sorry, Brent. Start all over from the very top. Sorry about that. It's just hard online when people can't hear.
So all I was saying was that the demons prefer to be present in the physical world here than they do to be in the abyss or the.
Let me pause there for a
judgment.
second.
Yeah.
What does that tell us about how important it is to stay away from hell?
Yeah, you don't want to be there.
Even the demons don't want to go there, and that's kind of their thing.
Yeah. And then the other thing that's interesting is that Jesus says, or it says that for he had been commanding the unclean spirit to come out of the man, which indicates that this wasn't like Jesus didn't just say come out and they came out. Like
Yeah.
there was some kind of a conversation going on here.
Yep.
I don't think that indicates that Jesus didn't have the power to just throw them out, but there was something happening that's a little bit more than what we get just from the scripture.
Yep. So the important thing about that, and I agree with you, and I think that's for a purpose, and we'll see as this unfolds what I think is going on. Why it wasn't Jesus just commanded them to come out, they just kind of disappear and the guy's back in his right frame of mind. That's not how it played out at all. And I think that's for a very specific purpose. So I think you're right. I think this was some kind of a conversation, negotiating. You see negotiating going on. It wasn't Jesus just like, okay, demons come out of him. It was a negotiation and definitely a conversation, probably a lengthy conversation to be quite honest. And they begged him not to command them to depart into the abyss. Verse 32, now a large herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside, and they begged him to let them enter these. So he gave them permission. Then the demons came out of the man and entered the pigs, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and drowned. Now imagine you're down here. They're up here grazing. And there are 2,000 sheep coming down. How well, or not sheep, pigs. How well, Jacob, how well do pigs go down steep inclines like that, steep hills? Are they sure-footed?
Not great. The question is, pigs don't really graze. Pigs don't really eat grass.
Yeah. So where are they? Well, they're probably wallowing in the mud up there, but...
Pigs more or less eat the grubs and like worms and stuff that are in the dirt, and they root their stuff, and they root, but they don't necessarily graze.
Yeah. So...
They're feeding on the mountain, whatever they were doing.
Yeah, they're feeding on something. But they're rolling. They're most likely rolling head over butt. It's not pretty. It's not a graceful. They're not like mountain goats going down the side of the mountain. So it's loud. It's obnoxious. This is a pretty gruesome scene. And then they all go into the water. So the people of the city see this. And a couple things going on. So why did Jesus give them permission to go into the pigs? Well, pigs they're what? They're unclean to the Jewish people. Another thing is, it's a very visible sign that the guy wasn't just like kind of deranged or pretending or whatever. Like there was a very visible sign that there's something very demonic going on here. The pigs going down over the mountain, drowning in the sea. This is all very visible. The people see this. Another thing is, we hear Jesus all the time. What does he tell people to do? You leave everything and follow me. Is Jesus more concerned about the soul of that one man or about people's livelihood from the pigs. Obviously, he's more concerned about the soul of this one man. And so it kind of sends a message to the people. Are you willing to believe at this point? Do you believe? If you believe, then the pigs are not that important. When the herdsmen saw it happen, they fled and told it to the city and the country. The people went out to see what had happened, and they came to Jesus and found the man from whom the demons had gone, sitting at the feet of Jesus, clothed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. And those who had seen it told them how the demon-possessed man had been healed. Then all the people of the surrounding country of the Gerasenes asked him to depart from them, for they were seized with great fear. So what did they choose? We want our livelihood. We don't want you. We appreciate what you're doing here, kind of, maybe, but please get out of here. Please leave us alone. They don't want Jesus. They want their livelihood. So kind of interesting here. He gets rejected in the region of the Gerasenes. So he got in the boat and returned. The man from whom the demons had gone begged that he might be with him, but Jesus sent him away, saying, "Return to your home and declare how much God has done for you." And he went away, proclaiming throughout the whole city how much Jesus had done for him. Now, interesting here. Oftentimes, what does Jesus say? Unless you follow me, you can have no part of me, right? Be willing to leave everything. But Jesus, we need to bury the dead. Let the dead bury the dead. Follow me now. Why is he not, like this guy's begging to follow him. Why does Jesus change his tune with this guy?
But also lots of times after Jesus heals somebody or something, he tells them to be quiet.
Yeah. Don't tell anybody.
But in this one, he goes away proclaiming throughout the city. Jesus didn't tell him to be quiet, but go home and declare to everyone how much God.
Yep, that's right.
I think it goes back to what we talked about a couple weeks ago. It's perspective of what group of people you're in and whether they're going to actually receive it or not. To being open, and they're going to receive it from someone that's their own.
Yes.
They've heard for years being the crazy guy.
So that's a good point. Here's an example of that. The woman at the well in Samaria. Why didn't Jesus go into the village and tell all these people who he was? There's not a chance they would have received him. But the woman, she goes back into Samaria, and she tells them everything that he had told her. He told me everything that I had ever done my whole life. They all came to believe, and they come back to Jesus. Like, all the people believe in him because of the woman. And I think the same thing, Jesus very clearly was not welcome in the region of the Gerasenes.
I was going to say, first off, Jesus didn't tell him not to follow him. He just told him not to come with him.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a difference there.
Yep.
Like, he's still saying, follow me. But he's saying, go, it's the location. Like, go tell these people.
Yeah. Which tells us what? I mean, about ministry, one size doesn't fit all, right? Like, we have a model usually where it's like the paid preacher model that we invite people to church, they listen, and either they believe or they don't. And other than that, like, there's not a lot of flexibility. Jesus had tremendous flexibility. Paul had tremendous flexibility. Paul said, I become all things to all people so that I might win some. We've got to have that flexibility to be able to, and discernment to be able to tell what's going to work in this region. For this region, this culture, this time, what's going to work? And that changed all the time. I mean, literally from town to town, Jesus would change both his message, a little bit of the messaging, but definitely the methodology. It changed often. Okay, I want to jump into this story just so that we have time. This is the final story in Luke here in chapter 8, and there's a lot going on here. First of all, Luke is doing something called intercalcation, which is a fancy word for sandwiching. So he sandwiches a story in between the bigger story. The bigger story is Jairus' daughter. That's kind of the big story. But in between, he breaks that story. He pauses, and he inserts a story about about the woman with the issue of bleeding. She's been bleeding for 12 years. He sandwiches that in between, and then he returns back to the story of Jairus' daughter. All right, so keep that in mind. Luke's doing that very intentionally, and he's tying the two stories together and kind of bookending the story of the woman who was healed. He's bookending that at both ends with the story of Jairus' daughter. Now, when Jesus returned, he's back in Capernaum. He's back on the west side of the Sea of Galilee. When Jesus returned, the crowd welcomed him, for they were all waiting for him. By the way, Capernaum, Jesus was always warmly received in Capernaum. There he came to a man named Jairus, who was the ruler of the synagogue. The synagogue, if you guys saw one of the archaeology videos that we watched on Wednesday night, you'll see that Peter's house is right in line with the synagogue, like they're all kind of in a straight line. So the synagogues always face towards Jerusalem. I'm trying to think what direction that is. Is that kind of south? Anyway, they always face towards the temple. So as they're worshiping in the synagogue, they're literally looking at Peter's house, which is where Jesus, the lowering of the paralytic man through the roof, like this kind of stuff happened at that house, which we know where the house is, and there's a church that was built over top of Peter's house. Pretty cool. Did you guys get to see that? Yeah. So the synagogue is right there, and how popular do you think it is for the synagogue ruler to be following Jesus? Would you say that's a pretty bold move? I would say that's a pretty bold move. The Jewish people wanted Jesus dead so badly. A lot of the Jewish rulers and leaders wanted Jesus dead, literally. And here you have the ruler of the synagogue in Capernaum, and he's a disciple. So he's a ruler of the synagogue, and falling at Jesus' feet, he implored him to come to his house, for he had an only daughter about 12 years of age, and she was dying. And as Jesus went, the people pressed around him, and there was a woman who had a discharge of blood. Here's where he breaks and goes into another story, and then he'll pick back up with Jairus' daughter. There was a woman who had a discharge of blood for 12 years. Now, what do you see that's similar between these two stories right off the bat? Yeah, 12 years of age, 12 years of bleeding. So from the time Jairus' daughter was born, we have to assume that it was 12 joyous years. There's no indication that she had any kind of long-term illness or anything like that. So he has 12 years of joy. He's a ruler of the synagogue, which means he has what? It's kind of a P word. He had power, right? He had power. He's well respected. He's definitely up the social chain pretty high. And then for the same amount of time, for 12 years, you have this woman who had a discharge of blood. So what does that mean right off the bat? Number one, she's a woman. And Luke is very much drawing this contrast on purpose in a whole bunch of different areas. She's a woman. She's bleeding for 12 years, which means what? As far as Jewish law, the law of Moses? What's that? Yeah, she hasn't been to synagogue in 12 years. She's unclean. She's essentially a social outcast. Most likely, not most likely, Mark actually gives us a pretty harsh description here. She had spent all that she had on doctors. Funny that Luke, the doctor, lets that out. He doesn't mention that fact, but Mark just puts it out there. Mark's like, yeah, she had, actually Mark puts it this way. She had suffered much at the hands of many doctors and had spent all that she had. So she's poor. She's a woman. She's unclean, and she hasn't been at synagogue for 12 years.
But apparently she wasn't always poor.
Yeah, because she had money to spend, right? She had the money to spend on doctors. So that's Also a pretty devastating thing. When you have money and then you lose it all, trying to get well. She's in a tough spot. She had spent all her living. Oh, Luke does say it. But Luke leaves out the part where she had suffered much at the hands of the physicians. But she had spent all of her living on physicians. She could not be healed by anyone. She came up behind him and touched the fringe of his garment, and immediately her discharge of blood ceased. And Jesus said, "Who was it that touched me?" Why do you think he asked her this? Do you think he was angry? Do you think he was annoyed? I used to read it that way. I don't think anymore. I think he's calling her out of the shadows into the light. He's saying, you're worthy. You've been in the shadows for 12 years. You've been living in social isolation. You've been alienated. You've been alone. He's bringing her out into the open. He's welcoming her very warmly. And we know that because he uses one word that he never uses anywhere else in any of the other Gospels for any other person ever. He says, daughter. He calls her daughter. Who was it that touched me? When all denied it, Peter said, Master, the crowds surround you and are pressing in on you. But Jesus said, someone touched me, for I perceive that power has gone out from me. And when the woman saw that she was not hidden, she came trembling and falling down before him, declared in the presence of all the people why she had touched him. That's why Jesus called her forward. And how she had been immediately healed. And he said to her, daughter. It's the only place ever that Jesus addresses anybody as daughter. It's very affectionate. Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. While he was still speaking, someone from the ruler's house came and said, your daughter's dead. Do not trouble the teacher anymore. All right, first of all, interesting thing, Jesus goes into the dead person. We know that. We know the end of the story. We're going to read it here in a second. Going anywhere near a corpse defiles you as a Jewish person. Touching anybody who has an issue of blood, it defiles you, but it didn't defile Jesus. Why? Jesus wasn't considered unclean. He wasn't like banned from the synagogue. It didn't make him unclean. Why? Anybody else it did. It's because Jesus doesn't catch their defilement. They catch his holiness. You see, it's very different from anybody else, any other interaction. And Luke is really drawing this out. He's proving they don't catch, Jesus doesn't catch their defilement. They're catching his holiness. Jesus says, go, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. While he was still speaking, someone from the ruler's house said, your daughter is dead. Do not trouble the teacher anymore. But Jesus, on hearing this, answered him, do not fear, only believe. What context does this ruler now have? What context does Jairus have to be able to hear this and comprehend this and believe this? Literally what just happened. Jairus is there. We know that Jairus is there. While he was still speaking, someone from the ruler's house came and said, your daughter's dead. Jairus is there. He witnessed this woman being healed. And Jesus now says, don't fear, only believe, and she will be well. And when he came to the house, he allowed no one to enter him except Peter, John, and James. These three, the inner circle, Peter, James, and John, they're there at the transfiguration. Jesus is constantly pulling these three aside and showing them things that the other disciples don't get to see. He reveals to them things that the other disciples don't get to see. Peter, James, and John, he pulls them into the house, and the father and the mother of the child. So he pulls parents in, Peter, James, and John, and all were weeping and mourning for her. I don't know if you ever heard of a funeral service in like third world countries still do. Julian sends me videos of funerals, and it is loud. People are wailing. They have instruments. They hire bands to go up and down the streets, and they play really loud, obnoxious instruments, and people are literally wailing in the streets. This is loud. All were weeping and mourning for her, but he said, "Do not weep, for she is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him, knowing that she was dead. Now, it's interesting. Who is the they? I kind of picture Jesus opening the door and yelling out into the streets, basically, knock it off. Quit making all this noise. Don't weep. She's not dead. She's sleeping. I don't think he's saying this to Peter, James, and John and the parents, because the parents, he pulled them in there and he said, look, only have faith and she'll be healed. Yes, sir. They go in with him. And I think he's hollering out to the crowds, she's not dead, she's only sleeping. Stop weeping. They laughed at him, knowing that she was dead. But taking her by the hand, he called, saying, "Child, arise." And her spirit returned, and she got up at once. And he directed that something should be given to her to eat. I love this because, let me read the last sentence. Her parents were amazed, but he charged them, here it is, Jacob. He charged them to tell no one what happened. It's really interesting. Yeah. And they all know she's dead.
And they know she's dead.
Mm-hmm.
And the parents are told not to tell.
Yeah, don't tell anybody.
It just seems so illogical. Tell no one what's happened. Aren't they going to see that she's alive?
Yeah, you would think. You would think. It's pretty interesting, though. He charges them, commands them, don't tell anybody what happened. And I have to wonder, there are a couple things here, and we're over time, so I need to stop. But there are a couple things. I have some ideas, but I don't know. I wasn't there. But, did they witness something really amazing in that moment? Did they see something? Did they see a vision? I don't really know because, clearly the people wailing, they knew. They watched the girl walk out. He tells her to eat. She's probably been very, very, very long time without food because she was so weak. And so the first thing he says, hey, eat some food. Also, she's almost a teenager. They tend to have big appetites. And it's a really cool thing. So anyway, I'm out of time. I'm going to stop there. Super cool what Luke is doing in this whole chapter. Absolutely love it. We'll pick back up in a few minutes.